This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Latirzo, former fighter, part-time writer, full-time observer, and I am joined by and overshadowed by, at least by the picture, co-host Jack Hirsch, former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. Jack, the football talk before the show was fun. We're going to talk some boxing. We're going to talk some heavyweight boxing, and just let it rip like we always do. How are you tonight?
Well, let me give a pretty good, Frank. Let me give one plug that I didn't mention to you as far as heavyweight boxing. Last week's show was the 100th anniversary to the day of the Jack Dempsey-Louis Angel Firpo legendary fight at the Polo Grounds. This Saturday at the old site of the Polo Grounds, they're going to be having a function to honor that affair. You know, from 12 to 3, the WBC's involved. There'll be footage of the fights. There'll be refreshments. So someone can Google the information. It's going to be this Saturday between 12 and 3. But this Saturday, a modern-day heavyweight fight is taking place. Joe Joyce is back in with Zhang, the guy who derailed him last time, stopped him in 6 rounds, and that is a very intriguing rematch, Frank.
It really is, Jack. You know, Joyce was nearly a 10-1 favorite last April, and I don't think he won more than a minute of that fight. Zhang outpunched him from pillar to post, beat him with straight left hands and right hooks. It just looked like they were almost in 2 different leagues. I never saw Joyce so lethargic and listless, and his punches looked like he had nothing on them. And he made Zhang look like a modern-day Southpaw Sonny Liston. And, Jack, I'm actually seeing a lot of people that are saying they have a gut feeling Joyce is going to win, but other than that, they're not saying why.
Gut feelings shouldn't influence your prediction at all. I mean, we always have a gut feeling what could be. We emotionally get caught on a certain roller coaster as a rematch gets closer. For example, when Spence is going to fight Crawford again, for those of us who want to see Spence do a lot better, we're going to be searching for reasons. We're going to be trying to convince ourselves. And as the fight gets closer, we're going to say, you know, he went from no chance to a slight chance. It always
That's what they do
that way. But the different type of knockouts, Frank. Zhang dominated Joyce, as you said. But when the fight was stopped, it was a result of Joyce's right eye being swollen shut. I mean, the stoppage was 100% justified. And if you want to look at a reversal in heavyweight history, you could maybe compare not their fight in itself, but a fighter who suffered a bad loss. Floyd Patterson in his first fight with Ingemar Johansson got knocked down 7 times in the first round, but he wasn't beaten up during the fight until he was caught with a punch and then knocked down a good number of times after that. This was different. Joyce had chances to get back in the fight, but Zhang kept punishing him with the straight punches right down the slot, one after the other. But okay, Frank, you found someone here who's going to tell you why Joyce is going to win the rematch against Zhang. For the simple reason, if his eye didn't close in the first fight, I think he would have pulled that fight out at the end, because Zhang was huffing and puffing. And what people forget, Zhang was slowing down towards the end of the fight, but he beaten Joyce up so badly. All Zhang basically had to do was stay upright, and they were about to stop the fight because the eye of Joyce's was really in bad shape. Joyce has a lousy defense. It's not going to change in this fight. He's not going to become adept at slipping punches just because he got beaten up and lost this fight. But would you agree with me with this, Frank? No other heavyweight has Joyce's motor once they get going. I mean, once he gets his momentum going, he fights nonstop. There hasn't been a heavyweight maybe who's had such perpetual motion and busyness since Smoking Joe Frazier. I mean, every second. And I think he's going to be coming at Zhang all fight long, and eventually the big giant gets tired. Maybe he beats Joyce up for a while, but I got to assume he's not going to close Joyce's eye. And he didn't knock him out last time. He just closed his eye and gave him a beating. And Joyce's chin's going to hold up, and he's going to stop Zhang in like 9, 10 rounds. That's my feeling, because Zhang's going to tire out through fatigue.
Jack, I was rooting for Joyce in that last fight, and I've always felt that he's a very limited guy. He's big, he's strong, he pushes his punches, they have no snap, he's slow, you can't miss him. And in this case, in this fight against Zhang, he was fighting a guy the same size as him, who looked as strong as him, with a better offense, more power, better delivery system, knew what he wanted to do. And I just think it's just too much of an ask to ask Joyce to change. What can he do in the rematch this time other than maybe get inside, try to smother Zhang's shots? But Jack, to do that, he's going to have to take incoming. And we saw last time he was hit. Jack, it wasn't like he was just peppered. Whatever Zhang cut loose, he hit him with big shots. And no, he didn't knock him down. He didn't knock him out, but he really jarred the heck out of him. And I just have, I don't see anything in Zhang. He hasn't changed his trainer. He hasn't changed anything. I'm sorry, in Joyce, I just don't know what he can do. I think Zhang proved in that fight he's the more gifted, more skilled guy. Yes, what you said about Zhang tiring at the end of the fight, I saw that too. That is a little bit of a concern, but I'm going to assume that he's in great shape this time, the best shape he can be in. He's more confident. Maybe once he starts peppering Joyce, Joyce gets visions of the last fight. And if Joyce ever slows up, Jack, and he doesn't push the aggression and doesn't push the fight like you referenced Frazier, well, if you just make him slow down a little bit, he's a completely different guy. Now, the only guy that could do that was Foreman, but I saw Zhang do that to Joyce. I'm going to be rooting for Joyce, but I think I have to go to Zhang. It was just too overwhelmingly one-sided the last time. The skill set looked like they were on two different levels. I can't see Joyce changing that in 5 months. So I'm going to go against you. I'm not going to say knockout or decision, but I think Zhang's going to beat him in what amounts to a better fight.
Well, Joyce is going to have home court advantage, basically. He's going to be in front of his fans. And one thing Joyce is going to do all fight, he's going to be coming at Zhang all fight long.
That got him killed the last time, Jack.
But Zhang has stamina problems. He lost to Philippe Hrgovic.
A very, 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 very close decision.
But that's an ordinary fighter he lost to. Zhang is not a special talent. Okay, he fought a great fight. He threw everything he had at Joyce in the early rounds, and he damaged Joyce very badly. Let me ask you this, Frank. How come boxing is the only sport where we never consider this factor, never seriously consider this factor, that a guy beaten badly just had an off night, just had a bad game, basically? In other sports, they'll throw it out. If it's a winning team, let's say it's the Kansas City Chiefs, and they get blown out like 40-7 one game, well, just dismiss it. They just had a bad game. Forget about it. And then
they can change it, Jack. 7 days later, they get a chance to redo it. Not 5 months later. I just think that fight was too overwhelmingly decided in favor of Zhang. And let me ask you this: you said Zhang has issues, and I think the boxing community stamina issues. And I think most boxing people who hold an opinion we value would agree with that. But let me ask you this. I would rather be Zhang, and the only thing I have to tweak is my gas tank. Where if I'm Joyce, I have to tweak my defense, my delivery system, almost everything I've done to try to beat this guy. And I just don't know if he can do it. If he does, it'll say a lot about him. Maybe it'll say even more about Zhang. But Jack, just based on that, and I was even thinking about that during when I was watching that fight. And I'll be honest, I haven't gone back and rewatched it, but I'll tell you this much. I was thinking watching that fight, and I was saying to myself, if they fought again, what could Joyce do different? I could write the things down on paper. I could yell at him in between rounds in the corner what to do, but I don't know if he has this skill set to deliver it and apply it. We know he's tough, but the toughness wasn't enough in the last time. So it's an interesting fight. And the other thing is, Joyce said he's been working with southpaws and he's got his mind ready to go. He said he's corrected the mistakes that he made the last time, raring to go. I know I can beat him this time, and that's what I'm going after. After that, I'll be back in position. But, he really hasn't shed too much light on what he has to do. And I just think he's just going to come back, Jack, with more of what didn't work the last time.
Frank, what Joyce can do is rope-a-dope Zhang without actually using the ropes. All he has to do is keep coming at him, and he'll break him eventually. And like I said earlier, if Joyce's eye wasn't swollen shut, they weren't going to stop the fight. So as bad a beating as he took, that fight would have continued. And he had something like 6 rounds left to keep breaking Zhang, to keep coming at him. And a fighter, Frank, could dominate the whole way and then hit a wall like running the marathon. You ever see runners in the lead, late in the race? They just hit the wall and fall apart. That's what I think is going to happen with Zhang in this fight. I'm not questioning what Zhang might do to Joyce in the early rounds, okay? I suspect Zhang is going to get the better things. And it wouldn't surprise me if he was even dominating the fight, but then all of a sudden fatigue sets in and he could dominate Joyce in this fight for 6, 7 rounds, maybe win all of them and just suddenly fall apart. Listen, it happened. Another reminder. Remember Lorenzo Zanon and a washed-up Jerry Quarry. Quarry had nothing that fight, and Zanon just fell apart when he was tapped on the chin. But the chin isn't Zhang's problem. He has a terrible stamina problem. You could see that.
Jack, 2 retorts to what you just said. Number one, Joe Joyce, the few shots he landed on Zhang, I don't think he ever tickled him one time. I don't think he bothered him at all one time with any of the shots he landed, and there weren't that many because he couldn't get to him. So that's number one. He never showed that he could bother Zhang or make him do anything he didn't want to do. And Jack, the other thing that you glossed over, you talked about, well, if Joyce's eye wasn't injured and swollen, he could have come on at the end. Well, let me ask you this, Jack. How did that eye get injured and swollen? He tried to take the fight to Zhang, and he ate leather like he never ate before. So he paid a price trying to get inside and push the fight. Why won't that happen again, especially with the clean shots that Zhang was landing?
I think there was a certain overconfidence in Joyce's last fight. I mean, maybe he considered Zhang a threat, but I don't think he ever thought that he could actually lose. He had too much momentum in his career. I mean, we were all considering Joyce a legitimate threat before the Zhang fight to Tyson Fury, to Alexander Usyk, to Anthony Joshua. We thought, you want to know something? Joyce might actually have a chance to beat any of the 3 of them. I know, let me leave Joshua out because you're not high on Joshua. Usyk and Fury, okay? We thought Joyce would have a legitimate chance to beat Tyson Fury. I'm not saying you would have picked him to beat Fury, but it wouldn't have been a shock. He would have gone in there with a real chance going into the Zhang fight. That's how high his stock was. Zhang, the guy who lost the fight the year before, I don't think Joyce realized the danger he was up against. He was up against the big guy, figured he would wear him down the way he did, let's say, Joseph Parker, who he stopped in the later rounds. Parker, competent fighter who couldn't keep up the pace Joyce was saying. Joyce is going to set a torrid pace in this fight.
Okay.
Can Zhang keep the pace up? That's the question. If Zhang can keep
Jack, if Zhang is beating
12 rounds, Zhang could win on points. Okay.
If Zhang is beating the heck out of him like he did the last time, I don't think he'll have any trouble going 12 rounds if it goes that far, because Jack, he didn't take much incoming, and that beating that Joe Joyce took, it's only 5 months later. We don't know any residual effect of that mentally or physically. I just think it's a big ask after the disparity in that fight when it came to boxing skills. I mean, Zhang looked like Sonny Liston. He looked like one of the best boxer punchers in the last 10 years because he couldn't miss Joyce.
You don't compare to Sonny, say look like Sonny Liston.
But Jack, I'm saying in that fight.
Knocked guys out when he hit him. Zhang hit Joyce continuously with his hardest blows, and all he did was damage him. He didn't wobble him.
But Jack, all he did was damage him. Well, isn't that the purpose of the fight? I take my fist and hit you and try to do damage. That's exactly what Zhang did. No, he didn't drop him with a jab, but Jack, he beat the hell out of him. He beat him every way. He won every minute of that fight. And all Joyce can do is come in and hope that his chin holds up and he can take another beating where the other guy gets tired of hitting him and he goes away. That's a big ask. Could he do it? Could it happen? Yes, it's heavyweight boxing. Anything could happen. Would I be surprised? No, but I just can't pick it coming in. I just can't. I can't pick it coming in because, again, the difference in the way they looked in the ring the last time, boy, that would almost be like, I guess, Eubank turning the tide on Smith. I mean, that's a rematch.
That was different. The first Eubank-Smith fight was a close fight until Smith hit Eubank, and he hurt him, and then he stopped him quickly.
But Jack, my point is, when the fight ended, it was all one-sided. It was a devastating finish. That's all that mattered, how the fight ended.
What devastating finishes, but the point is this: if nothing else, Joyce showed he can absorb Zhang's hardest blows. Zhang never, like I said, got him off his feet. He damaged him badly. So I gotta believe Joyce is gonna be in this fight all the way. Can Zhang go the full 12 rounds? That's
okay. You said that Joyce showed he can take Zhang's best shot. And I guess if not getting knocked down or out means he took it, then he did. But his face was his eye was rearranged. Yeah. But let me ask you this, Jack. What damage did Joyce do to Zhang? He didn't even look like he tickled him.
Zhang handed out a one-sided beating to Joyce. He did. He threw everything he had at Joyce. Fortunately for Zhang, he didn't have to go in the later rounds because Zhang was setting a fast pace in that fight. I really question whether he could have kept it up, but we'll find out Saturday. I'll be shocked if Zhang wins by an early knockout and doesn't give us that answer.
He's not. I don't think he's going to win by an early knockout. I just think he's going to beat him up.
Okay, but let's see if he can maintain it over the course of the fight, because Joyce is going to keep coming at him unless it gets to the point where it's like last fight that Zhang is handing out such a beating that eventually Joyce's corner sees he's not coming on in the later rounds, and maybe they stop it after 8-9 rounds. But I kind of feel Joyce is going to be taking it to Zhang. I think he's the better fighter. I think he's the better talent. I mean, we're basing...
Oh my God, Jack! Are you kidding me?
You're basing it on one fight, Frank.
But that's all I have to base it on, Jack. They fought one time. Jack, wait a second. You mean to tell me that if we had 10 guys who never saw either one of them fight, let's just say we pick all the names that we know who they are, who hold an opinion we value, and they sit there and they watch that fight, they never saw either of them fight before. You mean to tell me they're going to say Joyce is the more skilled guy? There's no way.
On his body of work over his career.
I don't care about that. It looked like nothing when he got in with Zhang.
Joyce has no defense. I'm talking about offensively, the way he attacks, the way he punches, the way, his ring generalship moving forward, how he can wear an opponent down, how he can impose his will on them. That's what I'm talking about. Defensively, Joyce is awful. I'm going to give you that, Frank. He's awful defensively.
Jack, Joyce didn't do one thing better than Zhang in that last fight other than take punches. That was it. He did nothing better. If he hits harder, we didn't see it. If he's a better boxer, we didn't see it. If he can put his punches together better, we didn't see it. If Joyce can turn that around, he is a much greater fighter than I give him credit for being, because he lost every aspect of that fight.
Let me ask you this with Joyce. Is this a red flag? Joyce, even though he was a late bloomer to the heavyweight division and fighters are fighting at a more advanced stage, we tend to forget how old these guys are compared.
He's 38 and Zhang's 40.
Yeah, I mean, just look at their age. And you wonder at what point a certain fighter's going to hit a wall, no matter how great they are. Are they getting to that point? Fighters don't seem to be concerned about age anymore.
Jack, I think a lot of that has to do with the heavyweight division today is a much slower track than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. And I think that's why these guys go later in life and can fight longer, because A, they don't fight that much. B, how many of their fights are tough? C, there's not that many elite guys. And when they fight, it's so seldom. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But now that you brought that up, Joyce is 38, Zhang is 40. Based on that last fight, Joyce may have aged some, and it may have even taken more out of him than we think.
We'll find out, but it is a very intriguing fight. I'm really kind of looking forward to it. Who's fighting over the weekend? And I have a problem with this, Frank. Conor Benn. Conor Benn's fighting in a show in Orlando, headed by Cepeda and Richardson Hitchens. A few other good names on that show, but all of a sudden we get a press release a day ago about Conor Benn being on the show in Orlando. Now, Conor Benn was suspended for PED use. Okay, it's a whole long story with VADA and the whole bit, and his name was never cleared. There was no proof that he wasn't on it. The things he was accused of being on, the things that turned up when he was tested. And they're kind of rushing him into this fight because once Conor Benn returns to the ring, it's harder to ban him, okay? It becomes much harder. So that's what they're basically doing. Conor Benn's fighting on the undercard. He's a main eventer, but they're just like kind of getting it out of the way. It's like they're rushing him into this fight so they could say he returned from his suspension. And he's going to claim this is vindication. But there's no vindication. That's the second.
Jack, he can claim whatever he wants.
Conor Benn is, perceived as being a first-rate cheater.
Conor Benn, Jack, holds my interest, and I followed the shenanigans of his career about as much as you care about the swarmers that we haven't seen for the last 30 years. Conor Benn, to me, I don't even acknowledge him right now because, like you said, he's a cheat. There's too much up in the air, and if he wins this fight, it means nothing. I will cede to you. I think they're doing what you say. They're trying to sneak him in. But does anybody care about Conor Benn?
It's a big thing in the UK because they're trying to make a fight, him and Chris Eubank again, and that would do tremendous business in the UK, even though both guys are basically piggybacking off their dad's names. Both of them are fighters of merit. They've proved themselves that they're kind of like elite fighters. Other fighters like Campbell Hatton, Ricky Hatton's son, he's a prelim fighter. He's piggybacking 100% off his dad.
That's Hasim Hamed's son's doing the same thing.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes the sons prove they really can fight. In most cases, that doesn't happen, but sometimes they actually do. So in the case of Conor Ben, he's a legitimate top 10 fighter in his division, as is Chris Eubank.
Let me see Conor Ben fight Boots Ennis, and I'll get excited because I've heard him talk about that fight.
I wanted to say something about indirectly related to that, to Boots Ennis, because it made me think of Terrence Crawford. And I mentioned something about Mount Rushmore last week, and you asked me, is Larry Holmes on Mount Rushmore? And I said yes, but the answer is really no. And this is how I want to explain it. You can be an all-time great fighter and not actually be on Mount Rushmore. It's not about accomplishments as much as perception as you become a legend and cross over to the mainstream public. For example, heavyweights. Muhammad Ali's Mount Rushmore. Joe Louis is Mount Rushmore. I guess Rocky Marciano, you could say so because of because of the amount of people who know of him even now and talk about him. Maybe Jack Dempsey, maybe Jack Johnson. Okay, not quite a Larry Holmes, even though Larry Holmes may have been better than most of them. That's not the argument, okay?
I understand what you're saying.
Right, exactly. Marvin Hagler might not quite be Mount Rushmore. I'm not sure. Sugar Ray Robinson is. Harry Greb is. These, Roberto Duran is. Guys who kind of not just great fighters. There are a lot of great fighters. I'm not talking about who's better than who. One fighter could be a Mount Rushmore, but a greater fighter might not be. That's what I meant. It's so hard to explain.
Well, how about Jack? Mount Rushmore is only 4.
Well,
so you could go. But what I'm saying is, so to me, when I think of Mount Rushmore, I think of only 4. So is it Mount Rushmore pound for pound, or is it Mount Rushmore of the middleweight division or the light heavyweight division? Marvin Hagler to me would be Mount Rushmore of middleweights. But if I had to go Mount Rushmore totality, my Mount Rushmore would be Joe Louis, Sugar Ray Robinson, Muhammad Ali, and Harry Greb. I think they would be my Mount Rushmore, and it would be for all the reasons you said, and plus how great they were as fighters.
Darn it, Frank, we're in a court, actually. But let me throw this at you, okay? And we're not talking about how great he was as a fighter, even though he's a great fighter. Jack Johnson was more famous than Harry Greb, making the play on him and so on. And obviously, everyone knows who Ali is, Mount Rushmore for sure. Lewis, an absolute legend, okay? Sugar Ray Robinson, the greatest. So if we have space for one more, maybe it is Harry Greb, Mount Rushmore, based on what he did in the ring. I guess Greb is an intriguing fighter now because people still talk about him, even now. And they realize how legendary he was, fighting 45 times in a year once, too. But I see what you mean. I would agree with you over the 4 of them. Yeah, definitely.
Jack, I have Greb there for the main reason is this. Look, was he really iconic like some others? No. But I think he has the best record and resume of any fighter who has ever lived. And he was so overwhelming, and just his record alone and his perpetual motion style based on what we've read. And there's no film of him, but we have films of the fellas he beat, and we know how great they were. So that's why he makes it. That's Robinson.
Intriguing. No film on Greg. That makes him more mysterious and more intriguing.
That too. But that would be my Mount Rushmore. Now, no, Larry Holmes doesn't make it under any merit, but Sugar Ray Leonard wouldn't make it either unless we're talking about welterweights.
But something about going forward, the guys of our era, Frank, who, if we have to set a new Mount Rushmore, like a new 4, for example, something about a Roberto Duran I think he's destined going forward to have more legendary status than Sugar Ray Leonard going forward. In the eyes, the public, the mystique of the man, you kind of wonder about Floyd Mayweather. And before you get annoyed about it, the hip hop generation or whatever, this new generation, to them, Floyd Mayweather is a Mount Rushmore candidate. Not to you and I, but to them, he is a certain segment of the population. And you can't ignore those boxing fans because
they're going to write history in 25 years.
They're going to be involved with history, looking back on, who were the great legends of their time. They're going to say Floyd Mayweather. To you and I, that's not quite the case, even though Floyd is a great, great fighter. Make no mistake about it. He is a great, great fighter. We're not downplaying him, but he just doesn't quite measure up to a Roberto Duran or Sugar Ray Leonard as far as taking the hardest challenges. I think that's the thing we hold against him the most.
But if you ask him, he'll say, well, Sugar Ray Leonard got beat by a lightweight, and Duran lost, 9, 10, 15 times, even though it was all his career. So he says that's why he's better than them. He said Ali lost to Leon Spinks. That's why he's better than him. So,
let me say something, Frank. Mayweather ended his career 50-0. And the way he ended his career, there were soft fights. Like Conor McGregor for his 50th fight, a guy who never even had a pro fight. Andre Berto, who was, so fight, even though he held a belt once, past his peak in the fight before that. Roberto Duran, after he beat Sugar Ray Leonard, he was 72 wins, 1 loss. He had 23 fights more than Mayweather, and he was 22 and 1 more. And he had the type of victories that Mayweather never had. He didn't beat Mayweather, anyone in Sugar Ray Leonard's league. He beat the great Sugar Ray Leonard and moved up in weight to do it. Even Ken Buchanan at lightweight was better than anyone that Mayweather basically had fought when he was in the lower weight division. Buchanan was better than Diego Corrales, and that was Mayweather's signature win.
Yep.
I mean, but
Mayweather had the best career, Jack. You said that he had the best career, and he was the best businessman. But
he's smart. Yeah, he did it. Yeah, he did it. Yeah, you got to give him credit. I don't know.
I will give him credit for that, and I also think he hurt the sport. That's why Tyson Fury's fighting Francis Ngannou, however you say his name, and he's and Fury's also talking about fighting some other MMA guys. I just think Mayweather took the business part to a level that's bad for the sport, and I can see why the other guys want to emulate it. But Jack, something we were going to talk about that you mentioned and you wanted to bring up, and I'm interested to speak on it. It came out this week that Terrence Crawford is leaning towards giving Earl Spence a rematch at 147. And some people are saying if that's a duck. I don't think that's a duck. Here's the way I look at it. I think Crawford is caught up in the numbers game. He's got 18 title defenses, no losses, and 15 knockouts. I think he wants to fight Spence at 147 so he can add that to his record as a title defense, where if he fights him at 54 and neither guy holds a title, Crawford gets nothing from that. He doesn't get the pristine record. He already beat him. All he will get is money, and we know money's nice, but he wants that record. So to me, I think that's why, after thinking about it, and he realizes that, wait a second, that won't count as a title fight if I fight him at 154. So I'll defend the titles against them, all 4 of them. It's got to be at 147. So to me, I think that's why Crawford suddenly is turning back and going to 147.
Frank, we have a different perception of this. Crawford, because he won the first fight, he had the choice to have to fight at 147 or 154. Immediately after he beat Spence, Crawford said how he'd be willing to go up to 154. Making weight isn't easy for Crawford either, okay?
Right.
And he'd be very... But he insisted on 154 only if they could redo the contract and he could get more money. Basically, he's shaking Spence down, legally shaking him down, okay? He has a right to do it. So he's trying to exert the pressure on Spence to give up some money because he feels I beat Spence soundly. I should be getting some extra money over and above. I'm not sure what the split is for the rematch. I hear it's 60-40. Well, we know it's 55-45, and he wants to get paid like he's the far superior fighter, like he proved in the first fight, figuring Spence might say, I can't make 147, so I'm going to give you a few $1 million more to make it a 154. And then Crawford said, sure, he will. I don't like this what Crawford's doing. It's his right to do it, first of all, under the contract. You can't have it both ways, Frank. You can't talk about, oh, I'm going to move up. I'm going to challenge Canelo. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go up 154. I'm after Charlo. I'm after Canelo. I'll fight Canelo at 160, all that talk. And then wimp out and insist Spence get down to 147? Come on. I mean, go fight him at 154, stop Spence at 154. Now you're putting some serious pressure on Canelo. Because guess what? You're not 3 weight classes away from him anymore. You're 2 weight classes, and Canelo isn't a true super middleweight. All of a sudden it becomes a viable fight. If he fights him at 147, he pushes himself further away from Canelo, whether he realizes it or not.
Jack, you have my head spinning on that. Let me just say this, okay? I don't have a problem with what Crawford is doing. He beat Spence. It said in the contract, the winner calls the shots. There's a saying that says elections have consequences. Well, to the victor go the spoils. And I think Crawford, I don't think he's thinking about Canelo. I think he's thinking about his title record and defending the title. He's willing to do it. I think he may have just as much trouble making 147 as Spence supposedly did, but I think it's all about the records, and it's the Mayweather effect, the 50-0, the undefeated, having a lot of title fights. He's at 18. Not many guys have that many. He may fight 3 more times and get to 21. I think that's what he's doing. He wants it to be a title defense. That's why I think he's changed his mind. And Jack, guess what? He's allowed to change his mind. Fighters do that all the time. So I don't have a problem with it.
I don't think he's into legacy as much as you think he is. He hasn't talked about legacy his whole career.
Jack, that's all he's talked about since the Spence fight. I'm finally getting my dues. I've been telling you all how great I was for the last 7 years.
No, when I say legacy, where he's regarded as an all-time great, I think it's a current thing. He wants to be recognized pound for pound as the best fighter in the world. In fact, I know this. When Vasily Lomachenko was at the top of his game, okay, and Crawford, of course, was at the top of his, as he still is, someone from Top Rank who's in an influential position, and they were both fighting under the Top Rank ban at the time. Lomachenko still is, Crawford isn't, said, Crawford has this thing about Lomachenko because they were neck and neck for pound supremacy. So it didn't mean a lot to him. I understand that, but I don't think he thinks, I want X amount of title defenses as a welterweight. I think he just wants to keep beating everyone in sight, basically, get the best and biggest fights. And Canelo is the biggest fight out there for him, as far as, the public goes, business-wise. Let's be honest.
Jack, Canelo's the biggest fight for everybody right now.
No, but that's a super fight. Listen, if Crawford fights Canelo, I'm not saying it would do the business of Mayweather Pacquiao because that we were beating the drums on that for 5 years, but it would maybe get to 70% of the way of Mayweather Pacquiao because everyone will want to see that. It would be off the rails. The amount of
Jack, but I don't hear anybody talking about Canelo fighting Crawford. It's been floated a few times by them, but I don't think that's a fight fans are clamoring for. I think they realize Crawford's not big enough for Canelo, unless Canelo falls off the ledge.
Canelo will avoid Crawford. He realizes the threat Crawford poses. But first,
okay, so they're never going to fight.
Charlo.
So, Jack, take him off the list. They're never going to fight. Crawford and Canelo are not going to fight.
No, they might fight in time because Canelo eventually is going to have to take a major risk. Not that Jermell Charlo isn't a risk. Jermell Charlo is a risky fight, but one that Canelo probably should win, okay? But it's a risky fight still. You don't want to sell Charlo short. He's confident. He has an outside chance. But if Canelo is forced to choose at some point between a David Benavidez, if Benavidez beats Demetrius Andrade soundly, and there's a lot of pressure on Canelo to fight Benavidez, and he doesn't want to, you never know. He might say, look, I'm going to fight Crawford. If I lose to Crawford, I'm getting what, $150 million or whatever, and I'm not far off on the total.
Jack, I can't think about Crawford and Canelo right now because so much has to happen. All I'm going to say is what I said last week and the week before. For me, if Crawford doesn't fight Tim Tszyu, Boots Ennis, or Spence in his next fight, I have a problem. I don't want to hear any other names other than those guys, okay? So I'm just going to look at it like that, and I don't think we can speculate on anything until after Canelo fights Charlo because, Jack, the outcome of that fight changes so many things. If Canelo wins and looks bad, that opens up one path. If Charlo wins, that opens up another. If Charlo gets beat, that takes him off the table for Crawford. So until they fight, until that's settled, I don't really think we can speculate on that much other than the fact is I don't have a problem with Crawford saying he's going to fight Spence at 147.
It's a contractual thing. Everyone knew that beforehand. But I'm going to tell you, even if they didn't have the contract for rematch, if Crawford decided to give Spence a rematch anyway, I wouldn't have a problem with it as badly as Spence was beaten because Spence has had such a great career.
Right.
He kind of earned that rematch if the champion Crawford was willing to give it to him. How can you say like no? I mean, everyone's calling on Spence to retire. Personally, I think it would be a good thing for him to retire. He took too many blows unless Crawford fight. But if he's going to continue, he's kind of earned it, kind of in the same way that Matthew Saad Muhammad earned a rematch with Dwight Muhammad Qawi, even though he was beaten badly the first fight, because Saad Muhammad had such a great career. How can you
9 or 10 title defense
rematch? Right, exactly. And in Spence's situation, it's kind of similar.
Well, we'll see. We're going to have the the Charlo Canelo fight to talk about next week, that'll be a lot of fun. Jack, you also mentioned something that I thought we could touch on about fighters in history that never ducked anybody in their career. The two guys that come to my mind are, of course, Harry Greb, Ali.
Come on, Frank. We take into account their whole career. That was the
who'd Ali duck?
The fourth fight with Kenny Norton.
I knew you were going to say it, Jack. How can you say he ducked a guy he fought three times? He fought him 3 times.
Frank, he fought him 3 times. I'm saying there could be a small window in his career. That's why he didn't want the 4th fight. He avoided Norton at that point. You don't get at that point. That's why Ali was stripped by the WBC. He even got together with George Foreman. And he said, "Will you take care of Kenny Norton for me, and then we can fight." Come on.
That's what the movie said. We don't know if that really happened. It was said in the movie. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened, but Ali said to Foreman, "I can't knock him out." But no, Jack, I'm sorry. When you fight somebody 3 times and 2 times he didn't have to. He didn't have to give him the first fight, and the third fight, Ali could have fought Foreman then.
Norton was a no on the first fight. I mean, and then the rematch, Ali wanted vindication. He lost the first
that fight, yes.
By the third fight, it was 3 years after their second fight. So by that point, Ali had established himself more as a legendary champion. And he figured, yeah, I'll stop Norton. I'm better than him. And most people, and Ali was a solid favorite going into the third fight. The third fight convinced Ali he got an excellent condition for Norton. It was a nip and tuck fight. Most people think Norton won that fight. You think Ali won it? I was at Yankee Stadium. I
was there that night.
Right. Okay. Well, it could have gone either way.
I thought it came down to the last round. Most of the people around me thought that, but it was a close fight either way. But Jack, that was what, 3 months after he did the Inoki thing, where his legs had blood clot. He couldn't get in great shape. He couldn't get in great. He couldn't get in that great of shape. That's why he didn't move that much. And Jack, I'm sorry, he fought him 3 times. There's no way you can tell me that somebody ducked somebody that they fought 3 times. I will see this. Did he want to fight him again? He knew it was a tough fight. I'll give you that. But if the money would have been there, he would have done that. And you remember, people wanted him to rematch Jimmy Young back then. That's why they had the fight.
The money would have been there for a fourth Norton fight. Ali wanted no part of Norton after fighting him 3 times. That he was Ali by the WBC
because he didn't honor the contract. Right. Because the winner of him and Spinks were supposed to fight Norton. No, Spinks was actually supposed. Spinks signed the contract, Jack. Spinks signed the contract. If he beat Ali, he had to defend against Norton. He beat Ali, and he didn't defend against Norton. The WB stripped him, and that's why a few months later, when Jimmy Young and Norton fought, it was for the WBC title.
So you're telling me Ali wouldn't have had any problem taking a 4th fight with Norton?
I'm not saying. I'm going to say this, Jack. Did he have trepidation? Yes. But Ali showed throughout his career he would fight anybody, anywhere, at any time. Do I think he was playing businessman back then? I do. But do I think he ducked Norton? No, I can't say he ducked Norton or anybody else.
He knew he wasn't the same fighter anymore at that point in time. That's why he was avoiding Norton, because the third fight convinced Ali, I can't do any better against him than I did. I fought my best fight. And I was lucky to get out with the decision.
And Jack, if he would have won a close decision, if they fought a 4th time, Norton would have cried and wanted the 5th fight. How many times does he want to fight him? He had 3 chances to separate himself, and he never could do it. Was he a tough style matchup? Yes. And again, do I think Ali had some trepidation? Perhaps.
Okay, but we had a little thing with Ali. I agree with a mild disagreement for that small little pocket that, with the 4th Norton fight. We have a disagreement.
Okay, give me somebody else.
But I agree with you with Harry Greb. Okay, the great Sugar Ray Robinson. People ask why I never fought Charlie Burley. I don't get this. He should have fought Burley at some point, right?
Jack, Burley wasn't even a draw in his own hometown. And there really wasn't that much of a clamor for the fight back then. That gained notoriety a little bit later, but I don't think Robinson ducked Burley or anybody else. I'll say this, though. I do not think Robinson would have challenged for the light heavyweight title had it been Archie Moore instead of Joey Maxim, because he and Moore did talk about fighting, but Robinson wanted all the money and all the ancillaries that come with the fight. And Moore said, I'm not going to do that. You're ripping me off.
Well, Robinson was the toughest negotiator you could find. I mean, the demands he made. I don't think he and Floyd Mayweather ever would have fought if they came along at the same time, because Robinson wouldn't give an inch in negotiations at all, not an inch. I mean,
remember when he and Basilio were this close to fighting a 3rd time. And the purse was $500,000, And Robinson pulled out at the end asking for 750, and he was sure they'd go for it, and they scrapped it and walked away. That's why there was never a third fight with Basilio.
Okay. I'll tell you who didn't duck anyone at all. I can't find the moment. The Brown Bomber, Joe Louis.
No, didn't duck anybody.
Larry Holmes ducked Pinklin Thomas. He did. He did. He was late in Holmes' career. Thomas was a consensus #1 contender. He avoided him. And George Foreman ducked Larry Holmes, the second coming of George Foreman.
I will go there.
That would have been a big draw. George didn't want to know from Holmes at that
in 1999, when that fight could have happened. I do believe George Foreman looked at it and said, you know, I'm not sure I can catch him over 10 rounds. He might be able to move and jab just to keep me from getting set. That might not be to my best interest. And again, I've always said, prime for prime, Foreman knocks Holmes out. But if they would have fought in 99 as 50-year-old men almost, I think Foreman would have, Foreman he beat Moore in 94 and he was 45. They were both more than 49. Yeah, they were both pushing 50. I think at that time, maybe Holmes would have beat him. So I could see that. But Jack, we're talking about guys in their prime. Foreman didn't duck anybody in their prime.
We're not talking about guys in their prime, Frank. We're talking over their whole career. Was there
Jack, I'm not going to penalize them at 50.
No, I'm not saying it. I'm just saying it could have been a small window. Now, I'll tell you who fought everyone, who never ducked anyone, but maybe he did at the very end. Maybe you could talk me out of this, and I'm not going to argue. Lennox Lewis fought everyone. He fought Vitaly Klitschko, who was a late substitute for Kirk Johnson. And Lewis won that fight. He busted up Vitaly's eye, but Vitaly outfought him. And Vitaly badly wanted a rematch, and Lewis retired. Did he duck the rematch by figuring that was enough? But I'll give him a pass because he retired and he had a great career.
Here's the way I think Lennox Lewis looked at that fight. And before I touch on that, he didn't want to fight Chris Bird because Bird was up there and chirping and
Lewis ducked someone. There you go. But you feel he
not ducked him. I just think it was a business decision, Jack.
If you're avoiding,
but Jack, we know, Jack, at the end of their career,
it's always a business decision, Frank.
That's how they think, Jack. What does Lennox Lewis gain by fighting Chris Bird? And he could look bad.
That they're going to get hurt in the ring. Just the idea of being defeated hurts a fighter's marketability. It hurts their ego. It hurts their.
I think with Lennox Lewis, he was worried he'd look bad against Chris Bird and wouldn't beat him overwhelmingly because of their styles. But as far as Vitaly Klitschko,
I just want to get into as many fighters as we can in a little time here. Marvin Hagler, I don't think ducked anyone. He didn't have a rematch with Hearns, but there wasn't a big demand right after. I don't think Marvin ducked anyone.
He actually did duck Leonard a second fight because Leonard did offer him a second fight a year later.
When a guy is long retired for 4 years.
Oh, Jack, all of a sudden you're the boxing god now. You're deciding everything. No, Leonard offered him a rematch and he didn't want it.
It's not a duck. When a guy, if a guy hasn't officially announced his retirement, once a guy's retired, if Jim Jeffries didn't come out of retirement to fight Jack Johnson, would he be ducking Jack Johnson? He came out of retirement after 6 years.
Jack, Leonard said to Hagler, let's run it back. And Hagler said, get a life. And again.
4 years after Hagler was retired. Hagler tried hard to get a rematch before that.
Well, Hagler was only fighting once a year then anyhow, so I don't know how that year was a big deal. But back to Lewis. I don't want to leave it there, Jack. I don't think he ducked him. I think this is what he said to himself. This is what he said to himself. I was in the worst shape of my life, and I beat the guy that's supposed to be the heir apparent, okay? But I think inside he realized that, A, he was kind of lucky that night that he opened the cut, but he did open the cut, and that's part of boxing. But, Jack, I think he realized, like Marciano did when he thought about coming out of retirement, he didn't have it. I think Lennox Lewis realized at that time he was not willing to sacrifice and to put in the work it would take
Yeah.
to give him the best chance to beat Vitali. So I think he said, you know what? I have my health, my wealth, my title, and my respect. I'm going to cash out now. And that's what he did.
Okay. I agree with you 100% there, Frank. I'll tell you something that's going to be a shocker to you. Who ducked someone, who ducked something? Smoking Joe Frazier. Smoking Joe Frazier didn't go into the WBA heavyweight tournament. All the other top heavyweights did. He didn't. Now, it was Yank Durham's decision, but regardless, your manager represents you. You have to be held accountable. He didn't want to take the risk, even though he felt he was going to beat everyone, and he would have beaten everyone, as history showed us later on. But Smoking Joe did, duck the tournament.
Okay. As you said, Yank Durham pulled the strings there. And Frazier said, why should I go in a tournament when I'm already ranked number one? I'll just beat the winner. And he did.
Okay, but he ducked the tournament. All the other top heavyweights went to the dance. He made a decision not to.
They had no choice, Jack. He was the number one contender.
Yeah, he had concerns. Yank Durham had concerns that it might be a little risky. Let's not take the chance.
Jack, he ended up fighting, but he fought Buster Matheson, who was undefeated for the New York State title.
Yeah, Mathis was unproven. Listen, I'm the last person who's going to knock Joe Frazier, but he did avoid the tournament. He did avoid it. That's the point I'm trying to make. Avoid and duck is basically the same thing. He was given a full invitation, and the money was there too, for the tournament. Even though he made it up, he also beat George Chuvalo right before the tournament at the Garden. Then
who wasn't even in it.
Later. Yeah. Well, exactly.
Jack, he would have gone. He would have gone through all those guys in a
absolutely easy. No, like he proved later on. Floyd Money Mayweather.
Okay, he ducked fighting Pacquiao when he was at his peak. He ducked Paul Williams and he ducked Antonio Margarito. To me, he ducked those guys, and then he retired after Paul Williams beat Margarito. He sat out a year, and then he came back and fought Ricky Hatton, who was only fighting in his second fight as a welterweight instead of fighting those guys.
Fair enough.
I think the list is long for Mayweather.
Okay, fair enough. Old school, Emil Griffith. Never ducked anyone as far as I could see. Oh, wait, maybe. Nope. Even the great Emil Griffith, there wasn't a demand, and I asked Gil Clancy about this once. Why not a rematch with Hurricane Carter, the guy who stopped him in one round? And I remember Clancy telling me, we didn't think about things like that at that time. And I kind of believe Clancy. It was a different era. If a guy stopped you, it wasn't always a question. You had to get revenge. You had to get him back in the ring. The mindset was kind of a bit different at the time, but it would have been kind of nice to see Emil go back in with Hurricane Carter, who I think he would have outpointed,
yes.
in a rematch.
No, Griffith, Rodriguez, they didn't duck anybody. Did Monzon duck anybody?
No.
I can't think of who.
No, he took the challenge with Rodrigo Valdez when Valdez, a great fighter, was at the top of his game. Yeah, you have certain if Tyson Fury never fights Alexander Usyk, he has the automatic duck next to his name.
I agree.
Usyk might be old school. Has Usyk ducked anyone at all so far?
No.
So right
and
now,
he goes in their backyard and fights them. No, I give Usyk no.
Now, late in Lomachenko's career, we might be able to say he ducked Shakur Stevenson. He might be analyzing it. Shakur's a great talent. I'm trying to avoid him, and maybe going with Devin Haney again.
I don't think we'll see that fight, Jack.
No. But it's a fight that Lomachenko would, I think, try to avoid at this stage. In Lomachenko's prime, he'd fight anyone, but that's what sometimes happens when a fighter gets to be past their prime. Okay, Frank.
All right, Jack. Next week we'll have to talk about your boy Canelo and Charlo, and that'll be interesting. I know you're going to pick Canelo. I'm not ruling out taking Charlo.
Okay, we'll wait the suspense for next week, whether Frank Laterzo's picking Charlotte to sport a massive upset. I picked Joe Joyce, you pick Zhang for this.
I have Zhang, you have Joyce. That's right.
He has bragging rights in the next show.
All right, Jack.